The message arrived at 11:47 p.m., glowing on my phone like a confession meant for someone else, and in that instant my entire life tilted off its axis. I had been sitting alone in my small apartment in Cedar Falls, Iowa, the radiator ticking like an anxious heart, when I saw my boss's name on the screen and felt the familiar knot of work-related dread tighten in my chest. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won, and what I read next would unravel every carefully built wall I had between my professional life and the quiet, aching loneliness I carried into every Christmas season. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that one small moment can change everything, please take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. My name is Matthew Cole, and at 31 I had mastered the art of being invisible. I worked as a project coordinator at a mid-sized marketing firm in Des Moines, commuting daily from Cedar Falls because rent was cheaper and expectations were lower there. My boss, Rebecca Turner, was everything I wasn't. She was confident, respected, and carried herself with the calm authority of someone who always knew where she was going. She was in her early 40s, a widow according to office whispers, and the kind of woman who inspired both admiration and distance. People liked her, but no one felt close to her, and certainly not me. I was the quiet employee who stayed late, fixed problems without complaint, and went home to a silent apartment where Christmas lights blinked for no one. That December had been especially hard. My father, Jonathan, had passed away the previous spring after a long illness, and my mother, Ruth, had moved to Arizona to be closer to my sister. The Midwest winter felt colder than ever, and every decorated storefront seemed to mock. The emptiness I tried not to acknowledge. I told myself it was just another season to endure. Work was my refuge, my distraction, and Rebecca Turner was the steady presence who unknowingly kept me afloat by giving me purpose. The message I received that night was clearly not meant for me. It was long, unguarded, and painfully honest. Rebecca had written about how Christmas had become unbearable since her husband Michael died in a car accident 3 years earlier. She wrote about hosting empty dinners, about putting up a tree only to take it down days later because the silence was too loud. She wrote about wishing, just once, to wake up on Christmas morning feeling seen and chosen, not as a boss or a strong woman, but simply as someone worthy of love and warmth. At the end, there was a line that stopped my breath, asking if the recipient would want to make that wish come true. There were no emojis, no flirtation, just raw longing laid bare in text that felt like a prayer. I sat there for a long time, phone in my hand, heart pounding with the weight of something I was never meant to carry. I knew I should tell her it was sent to the wrong person. I knew professionalism demanded it, but I also knew I had just been entrusted, accidentally, with the most vulnerable part of someone I deeply respected. I typed and deleted a dozen responses, each one sounding inadequate. Eventually, I sent a simple message acknowledging the mistake and expressing sympathy, nothing more. I expected embarrassment, maybe even anger, the next day at work. What I didn't expect was the change. Rebecca didn't avoid me. She didn't apologize profusely or pretend nothing happened. Instead, she became quieter around me, more thoughtful, as if aware that I had seen something sacred. Over the next week, she assigned me to work closely with her on a year-end campaign that required late nights and long hours. In conference rooms lit by flickering fluorescent lights and coffee gone cold, I began to see her not as my boss, but as a woman carrying grief with grace and exhaustion. She, in turn, seemed to notice things about me, like how I always stayed until everyone else left, or how I never talked about my family unless asked. As Christmas approached, the office emptied out, desks abandoned for holiday travel. I had no plans, and neither did Rebecca. One evening, as snow fell thick and quiet outside the office windows, we worked in near silence, the kind that feels heavy but not uncomfortable. There was a moment when she looked up from her laptop, eyes tired but soft, and I realized that the accidental message had opened a door neither of us had known how to knock on. Without ever speaking about that night directly, we began to share pieces of ourselves. She mentioned her late husband's love for old Christmas movies and the way he used to burn the cookies every year. I talked about my father's habit of playing hymns on the piano every Christmas Eve, his voice slightly off-key but full of joy. These weren't conversations so much as offerings, laid gently between us, building something fragile and real. On Christmas Eve, a storm hit, grounding flights and closing highways. I drove back to Cedar Falls through swirling snow, feeling the familiar ache of another holiday alone. When I reached my apartment, the power was out. I sat in the dark, lit a candle, and for the first time since my father's death, allowed myself to cry. It was then that my phone buzzed. Rebecca had sent a message, careful and restrained, asking if I was safe. I replied that I was, though alone and without power. An hour later, headlights cut through the snow outside my window. I watched in disbelief as Rebecca stepped out of her car, bundled in a coat carrying a small box. She had driven nearly 2 hours through a storm because the thought of someone else being alone on Christmas felt unbearable to her. We didn't speak much. We sat by candlelight, shared store-bought cookies, and watched the snow fall. Two wounded souls finding comfort in shared presence. Christmas morning arrived quietly. The power returned, the world outside blanketed in white. We cooked breakfast together, laughed at small mistakes, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. There was no grand declaration, no dramatic turning point, just the slow, steady realization that healing doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes as a knock on the door in a snowstorm, or a message sent by accident that finds the right heart anyway. As the days passed, our connection deepened, grounded in mutual respect and understanding. We navigated the complexities of workplace boundaries with care, but more importantly, we honored the fragile trust that had grown between us. Rebecca found joy again, not by replacing what she lost, but by allowing something new to grow alongside her memories. I found purpose beyond survival, learning that being seen didn't require perfection, only honesty. If this story is touching your heart right now, if it's reminding you of someone you've lost or a hope you've buried, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement keeps stories of hope alive. Before this story ends, I have a special request for you. Please comment below with the word hope if you believe that even the most unexpected moments can change a life. By the following Christmas, life looked different. Not perfect, not free of sorrow, but fuller. Rebecca and I hosted a small dinner, inviting neighbors and co-workers who would otherwise be alone. Laughter filled the room, and the tree stayed up until New Year's Day. I realized then that wishes don't always come true the way we imagine. Sometimes they come true by teaching us that we're not as alone as we think, and that love, in its quietest form, is often closer than we dare to hope.